Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to the next episode of Just Browsing. You got your host, Matthew, here, along with Zach. And today we're going to be bringing you an episode called The Greatest Movie Franchise of All Time. Now, we've made a bracket of 64 movie franchises, and we're going to start with a round of 64 today.
Yeah, we figured we would try and do maybe the first two rounds so this podcast didn't go too crazy long, because if we tried to go through the entire bracket, it's probably going to be a really long podcast, and we don't want to bore you guys with that. But this is something that a couple years ago, Matt and I created. I think we were leaving like a Marvel movie or something. I don't remember what movie we were leaving, but I started thinking about, I think I just kind of asked you guys, I was like, have you ever thought about how many movie franchises there are in Hollywood that have 15 movies or something like that? And so we started compiling a list of franchises, of major Hollywood franchises, and basically this list that you're about to hear, the 64 teams that we came up with, what we considered a franchise was anything with more than 3 movies, because we wanted to differentiate trilogies versus franchises. So for the sake of this fun little experiment we're doing, all of these franchises have more than 3 movies.
And they're all phenomenal. And we understand this is going to be an opinionated topic. We're going to try and bring facts into it for some. But I already know Zach's winner. Zach already knows my winner. So this is all opinionated. We're going to try and form the best bracket we can and see what it matches.
Yeah, it's obviously one of those things that all of this is going to be opinion-based anyway. And what we've done is seed everything. So we have 1 through 16 seeds and 64 teams, exactly like you would have a March Madness bracket for basketball. But what we came up with for seeding is not what some other group of friends would come up with for seeding if they had the exact same list of franchises. So obviously personal bias is involved here, and the 1 seeds that we think are the 1 seeds are not obviously going to be everyone else's 1 seeds. And there's probably some people who would see this bracket and see one of our 14 or 15 seed ranked franchises and say that's my favorite franchise, and that's going to go through and upset everyone and win. So it's obviously totally opinion based, but I did look up some fun kind of tidbits and trivia and stuff like that we can actually use as ammo in later arguments, probably when it comes down to you and me arguing over Harry Potter and Star Wars. Most likely. So I don't know. Do you want to go through the teams, kind of like the seeding a little bit, or do you want me to kind of cover some of the interesting little trivia?
Let's go through that interesting little trivia thing.
Okay.
It just kind of gives like a background of some of the things we use to help seed, other things we're going to be thinking about, like Zach said, when we get into later rounds, when you have those 1 versus 2s, and it can become a hard choice if you take your opinion out. So we're going to go through some of those, and it'll help make choices easier.
Yeah. So the following are a few things that I kind of thought were interesting when it comes to thinking about movie franchises. So some of these things were just my curiosity, and I did a little research and tried to find some up-to-date statistics and numbers on some of these different questions. So basically, these were things that I thought would be interesting when thinking about these different movie franchises, because I'm kind of a big picture person. I like looking at the big picture type stuff sometimes, and looking at the box office gross and the Oscar wins, all that kind of stuff. It's just interesting to me. So anyway, the first one that I came up with was I wanted to know the highest grossing franchise on our entire list. So out of the 64 movie franchises that we have, obviously all of these have more than 3 movies.
Yep.
So you would think most of these have a pretty high box office gross. So this is all domestic box office, not including the global box office, but the 1, 2, 3, 4, the top 5 highest grossing franchises are as follows, basically. I'll start with number 5 and go up. So, and oddly enough, this number 5 we did not include on our bracket, and it's the Batman franchise. And we were debating on what to do with that, because
it's technically part of the DC universe in terms of it's part of the DC, it's part of that comic universe. But the Dark Knight trilogy, for one, I know it's a trilogy, but for those 3 films, you don't really get the mention of like a DC Universe film like
Right.
you do with the new ones like Aquaman and all of those newer ones where it's like you got to know it's a DC. You didn't get that with the trilogy.
Yeah.
And the older Batmans, I'm not a big fan of, so I never really sat down to watch them all. But I feel like they're not the same either with like,
Yeah.
you know, branding it like, oh, we got to get this big DC, you know, everyone's got to know. Everyone just kind of knows.
Yeah, and this one was kind of tough because, like you said, we already have the reason why this is not included on our list of 64 franchises is because we already have the DC Extended Universe in there as a franchise, which obviously is a more recent franchise. But when they're considering, so the article that I found that included these grossing numbers, basically the Batman franchise that they're considering are all of the Batman movies ever made, essentially going back to the Val Kilmer Batmans, the George Clooney, Michael Keaton, Christian Bale, the Dark Knight trilogy, all of that stuff. All of that is encapsulated into the quote-unquote Batman franchise. So it's actually not included in our franchise bracket, but Batman is the 5th highest grossing movie franchise in the history of movies with $3.5 billion in domestic gross.
Well, and we could simplify that being down to the Dark Knight trilogy is
I think the
pretty
Dark
much
Knight
probably
trilogy accounts for a lot of that.
3 of it.
Yeah,
At
I
least.
think the Dark Knight and the Dark Knight Rises were both billion-dollar movies. So there's
yeah.
two of your $1 billion of your 3.5 right there. So the next franchise, number 4, highest grossing domestic franchise of all time, Harry Potter, which is right in your wheelhouse.
the greatest films of our time, actually of ever.
I don't know if I'd go that far. But down to number 3, James Bond franchise, which kind of makes sense. They've been making James Bond movies since they've been making movies, it seems like. So they're at $5.8 billion domestic gross. Oh, and I think I don't know if I mentioned the Harry Potter, $3.5 billion gross. So same thing as Batman, basically.
Right.
Which is actually kind of impressive because I think it's a considerably less a less amount of movies than Batman. So
Right.
it's pretty
There's
impressive for Harry
8 of
Potter.
them, and they've
Yeah.
all come out in the last 20 years.
Right. Pretty recent. And then you got James Bond at number 3 with $5.8 billion domestic gross. And then coming in at number 2, my favorite franchise ever, Star Wars, $6.8 billion domestic gross. That makes sense. I mean, Star Wars has been around for decades now, and probably, if not one of the most popular franchises in pop culture. I mean, you see Star Wars stuff literally everywhere. So that did not come as a surprise to me.
No.
And number 1 also did not come as a surprise to me. Coming in at number 1, highest grossing domestic franchise ever, the Marvel Cinematic Universe, $8.8 billion domestic gross.
Right. And so when we get into these, the rounds where we're going to come back to these, some of this stuff could be eye-popping. Like, to me, like the Marvel Cinematic Universe, of course it's going to be 8.8. I mean, just think of the people that are involved in that universe that all have, 2, 3, 20 movies by themselves, and then you're like, hey, let's put them together into these movies. Let's put them into the Avengers. Let's put them, and
Yeah.
okay, so that 8.8 could be spread out over 35 movies. So when we get into those final rounds where we need to use stuff like that, we'll have to really think about how that was made and where it was made, because there's some that you're kind of like, no, I didn't even know it was a Marvel movie. And you're like, well, yeah, but it falls into that universe. So.
Yeah. I think there's definitely no understating how impactful the Marvel Cinematic Universe has been since it started in 2008 with Iron Man. I mean, it's just absolutely exploded into this colossal pop culture monster that is pretty much on par with Star Wars and James Bond and Harry Potter at this point, and just in terms of saturation of the pop culture sort of mindset.
Oh yeah,
It's everywhere, and I love the Marvel movies. Absolutely love them. They're some of my favorite movies ever. So
I mean, they're great. I don't think anyone's gonna, maybe those hardcore DC guys, but their opinion really doesn't matter when you watch some of their movies compared to the Marvel movies.
yeah, and we'll get into that. We'll get into that later. But okay, so that was highest grossing franchises ever. Marvel Cinematic Universe, the highest grossing domestic grossing franchise of all time up to this point, and will probably continue to be that way for a while, I would imagine. Another one that I thought was kind of interesting, which it was a little bit harder to find some actual concrete data on this, was the franchise with the most Oscar wins. And I basically only included the top 3 because I felt like these were the 3 that were worth mentioning. So I'll do the same thing. I'll go backwards and start at number 3. Indiana Jones franchise has 7 Oscar wins. I don't know if you have any special thoughts on Indiana Jones or not.
I love the Indiana Jones movies.
They're great.
I think they're great. I know they're coming out with another one, and I'm excited to watch it. The last one, I was a little iffy on, but it's kind of entertaining. It's more of that entertaining factor. It doesn't follow the older ones, where the older ones, they're great movies. I love them.
Yeah, the original 3 are classics.
Oh, yeah.
And I think between Indiana Jones and Star Wars, those franchises pretty much raised me. That's why they have such a special place in my heart. That's what I grew up watching as a little kid. So, yeah, the Indiana Jones movies are great. But 7 Oscar wins, it just is a testament to how good those movies actually are in terms of the critical reception. Number 2, in terms of most Oscar wins for a franchise, Star Wars with 10 Oscar wins. And I think when I was looking at the breakdown of which movies won the Oscars, the boatload of the Star Wars Oscars go to the original A New Hope.
That makes sense because at the time that was a groundbreaking,
yeah.
The idea was groundbreaking. The filming was groundbreaking. The CGI was groundbreaking. Now you move to when Disney takes over and you're kind of like, it's Star Wars, I'll like it anyways. But you're kind of like, well, I feel like we took a couple steps backwards maybe. So, yeah. That makes sense.
Yeah, it feels like since Disney acquired Lucasfilm and now has the rights to Star Wars, they're definitely capitalizing on the history that fans share with that franchise.
Yeah,
and,
sure.
people like me who have been Star Wars fans since they were little kids are going to go see the new movies regardless of how long they keep making them and whether or not they start having a real sharp drop in quality. It really doesn't matter.
It's all about the name at that point.
Yeah, it's all about the name, and I'm in for the lightsaber duels and the outer space spaceship battles. Like I'm in for all of that.
Yep.
So
I'm the same way. Like I love those movies. I'm not gonna be, I don't care to judge it on the storyline. I'll do that, but I'm just gonna go. I'm gonna watch it for the entertainment. And just be like, hey, I saw the new Star Wars, and let's talk about it.
Yeah, absolutely. So Indiana Jones with 7, Star Wars with 10, and these are Oscar victories. These are not nominations. Coming in at number 1, the Lord of the Rings franchise, 17 total Oscar wins. And here's an interesting tidbit about that as well. It's kind of the same thing as Star Wars. The boatload, the lion's share of those Oscar wins come from one movie in the franchise in particular, and that's Return of the King. I think Return of the King won like 10 Oscars or something, or 11 Oscars.
But if you look at that movie, if you look at all, 3 of those movies, because so I get Lord of the Rings could be counted as a trilogy. We're throwing in The Hobbit as it's part of the whole journey. This Oscar wins does just go to the Lord of the Rings, though. That trilogy by itself is a groundbreaking. Like I could watch. It's probably. I think it's like a 14.5-hour movie marathon if you watch the extended cuts. Of all 3 of them, I could watch all that right now and be like completely satisfied. Like it's just phenomenal the way they run the whole movie from, the book all the way through everything. It's phenomenal.
They're great. I love those movies. I'll never get tired of watching those movies. TNT shows them all the time on TV, and it doesn't matter what I'm doing. I will, if I scroll through, I'll stop and watch. I'm like, oh, hey, The Two Towers is on, and then there I'm in for the next 2.5 hours watching The Two Towers, and especially
the last half hour of The Two Towers.
Right, especially on TV, you got all the commercial breaks too. So a already almost 3-hour-long movie turns into a 5-hour-long experience with the commercials, but it's worth it.
It's 100% worth it.
So that one, moving on, I thought the Oscar wins was pretty interesting to think about. Moving on, I thought this is not as, I would say, an important of a measure of a franchise and of the franchises in this bracket that we've compiled, but I thought it'd be interesting to look at which franchise has the most movies. Because when you think about the Marvel Cinematic Universe, I think they're up to 23 movies now. And it seems
counting.
And with plans to go on, I imagine probably another 15 to 20 more.
Because you have another Guardians,
Yeah.
Already, I think that what comes out this year or next year.
Yeah, they've greenlit a whole bunch of stuff.
Thor, isn't there a new one that
Yeah.
Thor just got a? Yeah,
There's going to be another Black Panther, another Spider-Man. I mean, Black Widow was supposed to come out this year. So it seems like the Marvel Cinematic Universe has just an insane amount of movies, but it actually comes in at number 3. I picked the top 3 again here. Marvel has 23 movies, and that's the third most movies of any franchise on this bracket. Number 2 is James Bond with 25 movies. And I think James Bond is another one like Marvel. I think, well, really any of these gigantic blockbuster Hollywood franchises, they're just going to keep making these movies until
it's all about the name.
world ends. Yeah. James Bond, Marvel, Star Wars, Harry Potter, maybe not Harry Potter, but like they're
Harry
just going to
Potter's probably done.
They're probably done, but they're just going to keep making these movies because you know what? Every time it comes out, it makes $500 million at the domestic.
It's all
box
about the money.
office.
So yeah,
So why would
people
they not,
will go see it?
Why would they not keep making them? So James Bond, 25 movies with another one that's supposed to come out this year. We'll see what happens. And coming in at number 1, Godzilla franchise, 35 movies in the Godzilla franchise.
You know what's crazy to think about this, and I know we just talked about this before we started this episode. Godzilla has 35 movies, and they've dated back to the 40s.
Yeah.
James Bond has 25, and they've dated back, what, to the 60s?
Yeah, I'm not sure when the first one was, but
I think
definitely
it
goes
was
back to
late
at least the
60s, maybe early
yeah.
70s. And then you have Marvel.
Which is since 2008.
In the last 12 years, they're producing at a rate of 2 movies a year.
Yeah.
And they're not low-quality movies. They don't have no-name actors or actresses. It is big names. Let's pump out a movie, and we're just going. And, oh, we got another movie coming out. Oh, you know what? We felt like 3 this year. We're coming out with a 3rd.
I think that's the most remarkable thing about Marvel is, like you just pointed out, since 2008, Iron Man kicked off the Marvel Cinematic Universe. In that short amount of time, they've released 23 movies. And like you said, they've gotten up to 2 and even 3 per year. I think last year, Captain Marvel, Avengers Endgame, and the new Spider-Man movie all came out in 2019, which is just remarkable.
Yeah, I mean, and the crazy thing to think about it, too, is, you know, I get that there were comics before all of these, so these have been planned out for a while, but the quality of the movie never drops. Every time, you know, the quality gets better and better. And it's just insane to think that in 12 years, they've grossed $8.5 billion domestically. They're almost averaging $1 billion a year just on box office tickets alone. Not even sales of anything else, but just box office.
It's pretty remarkable. And really any of the movies that come out in that franchise too, they don't even have to be the major Avengers releases. Like the Ant-Man movies will come out and make hundreds of millions of dollars at the box office. So basically any movie they decide to release, they know they're going to get a return on their investment. It doesn't matter how much they spend on making those movies, which they spend a lot.
Oh, yeah.
They're going to make their money back.
Well, anything labeled Marvel takes off.
Yep.
And there's no question that it's going to be a good movie.
So the last one I had on here for just interesting trivia and tidbits before we get into the actual bracket is I wanted to figure out of all of these franchises that have all of these movies that have spanned some of them across decades, which franchise is the highest rated in terms of average rating on their movies? So what I found was, and I'll just go through the top 5 to see kind of what your thoughts are on these. So I'll start with number 5. Number 5, the Jason Bourne series has an average rating of 69%. And I think the article that I was looking at, they were using Metacritic. So obviously you have IMDb ratings, there's Rotten Tomatoes ratings, there's Metacritic, there's all these different rating systems. So the metric that they were using here was Metacritic, I believe. But the average rating for the Jason Bourne movies is 69%, which I think is that considered fresh on Rotten Tomatoes, or is it over 75%?
I think over 75 is,
yeah.
But
still a pretty solid average rating across, what do they have, 5 movies?
Well,
yeah,
it's
5 movies.
It's all based on opinion. So these are movie critics, or, you know, they're a critic. Sometimes their opinion doesn't matter because they're like, oh, it sucked. And it's like, well, it made $3.5 billion.
Yeah.
Like, well, it still sucked. It's like, I think you just suck at your job.
I think that's one of the weird things about movie critics, and I don't read a lot of. I'm not a big fan of following certain movie critics and reading their opinions about in their write-ups.
They ruin the movie
on new releases. I think I see trailers come out, I read descriptions of movies, and I'm following what's on the release radar, and I'm like, I'm gonna go see that movie because I think it's gonna be a good movie. And then what I try and do is just make up my own opinion of the movie, leaving it, and I don't want to go into any of these movies filled up with, oh, this has a really high Rotten Tomatoes rating or it has a really low Rotten Tomatoes rating, because I've seen some movies that have 99% on Rotten Tomatoes where I'm like, that movie is not very good.
Yep. Or you see the opposite where it's like a 20
Exactly.
and you're like, that movie was great.
Yeah,
like,
you see the
who
opposite.
who is the one critiquing this movie?
Yeah, so the Metacritic scores that we're using here for this list of the highest rated on average franchises are from critics, but I think I would just like to say, and I think everyone understands, take that with a grain of salt.
Right. Yep.
You know,
It's all opinion.
Coming in at number 5, Jason Bourne, an average rating of 69% on Metacritic. Number 4, the Mission Impossible franchise with an average rating of 69.7%. And something I wanted to point out about Mission Impossible, it's not just your imagination that they're getting better and better each time. They're actually getting better and better each time in terms of the rating. So the first one started off with a 59% rating, and the newest one has an 86% average rating. So the most recent release in that franchise is the highest rated of the entire franchise.
Well, that's
Pretty
good.
crazy.
I mean, you should get better as time goes on.
Ideally, that's what you want to do, but
Until you drag it out too long.
Unfortunately, a lot of franchises
Like
fail
a
to meet
Pirates of
that.
the Caribbean.
Yeah. So Mission Impossible, just absolutely killing it. I actually just watched Mission Impossible Fallout, which is the newest one, a couple nights ago. It's a great movie. Absolutely fantastic movie. So that is number 4. Number 3, this will please you, Harry Potter. Average rating of 70.9%.
Greatest of all time.
And I also thought this was interesting. My personal favorite of the Harry Potter franchise is the highest rated according to Metacritic, which is Goblet of Fire.
One of my favorite. I mean, I'll just put it out there. They're all pretty much my favorite besides Chamber of Secrets. That movie was kind of like, all right, this is going on way too long.
You didn't like
I'm
Chamber
not a
of Secrets?
huge fan of Chamber of Secrets. All the other movies, though, I'm like, don't ever end. Chamber of Secrets, I'm like, all right, we can let's get to the end.
Let's move this along.
Let's move this along.
Goblet of Fire is hands down my favorite. And supposedly the critics backed that up. So I felt vindicated by reading that.
You know what I don't see on this list is Star Wars.
It's a fair point.
Let
I'm
the
not going
debating
to get
begin.
into that with you, though. Although I will say, as we just learned from my recent trivia, Star Wars has more Oscar wins than the Harry Potter franchise. So I'll just leave that out there. But we're not getting into that right now, Matthew.
We'll wait till the championship round. That might be like a 5-hour episode
Yeah.
on 2 movies.
On 2 movies. Coming in at number 2, the Middle Earth franchise. So Lord of the Rings / The Hobbit has an average rating of 76%. And I think mostly anyone who has seen these movies, this is not going to come as a big surprise, but the highest rated films in this franchise are the original Lord of the Rings trilogy. Critics did not really like the Hobbit trilogy, which I kind of understand on some level, but I really liked the Hobbit movies. I think, like we kind of spoke about on our previous episode, I think they just didn't like the use of so much CGI. They seem to rely on CGI a lot more than the original films, but highest rated movie in that franchise is Return of the King with a 94% rating, which kind of makes sense. It won 11 Oscars. So
Phenomenal movie. I can't point anything out that
Yeah.
that's wrong with it.
I mean, what else can you say about the Lord of the Rings franchise?
They go, it was too short, but no, it wasn't too short.
And coming in at number 1, I thought this was really interesting. Mad Max with an average rating of 77.8%. And something, I mean, the original 3 movies, all within the 70s. The Road Warrior had a 77%. That was the highest out of the original 3. So they're all pretty good movies, not
Mel
bad.
Gibson.
Mel Gibson, they're cool movies, but what really brought their average up is the newest one, Mad Max Fury Road, which has a 90% on Metacritic and is just, in my opinion, one of the greatest action movies ever made.
Phenomenal movie. I had my doubts going into it. I was like, you know what? I don't have my hopes up high. I think it's going to be, not a trash movie, but a movie I'll watch once and kind of be like, I saw it. Like, big deal. I watched it and I got more hooked, and then the movie ended and I was like, well, I kind of want to watch it again because I came in with bad expectations, so I kind of burned myself through the movie just to get through it, and then I really wanted to watch it again. And I've probably seen it 5 or 6 times now.
It's amazing. We bought it as soon as it came out, and we rewatch it periodically, every 6 months or something.
Great
It
movie.
is absolutely amazing. Like I said, one of the greatest action movies ever created, and I mean that literally. From about 5 minutes into that movie, the action starts, and it does not let up until the very end. I mean, it is one of the most relentless action experiences you're ever going to see. So if anyone out there has not seen Mad Max Fury Road, do yourself a favor and see it. It is incredible. So with that wraps up my interesting little tidbits that I did some research on the other day about these various movie franchises. So we can kind of segue into the actual franchise if you're ready to kick us off.
So yeah, we're gonna dive into it. I think we'll just do a quick rundown of the 64 movie franchise in here. We'll go through each matchup individually, but I'm just gonna give you the seeds real quick, and then we'll start with the round of 64. So at our number 1 seeds, we have Star Wars, the Marvel Universe, Harry Potter, and then the Lord of the Rings and the Hobbit. At 16, we have Dirty Harry, Medea, Amityville, and Scary Movie. At 8, we've got Scream, Jaws, King Kong, and Despicable Me. At 9, we have The Hunger Games, Child's Play, The Conjuring Universe, and Transporter. Coming in our 5 seeds, we have Paranormal Activity, Rambo, Shrek, and Predator. At 12, we have National Lampoon, American Pie, Resident Evil, and Jack Ryan. And now we're getting into the second half of each bracket. With the 4 seeds, we're going to have Alien, Fast and Furious, Indiana Jones, and Terminator. The 13 seeds will be Final Destination, Ice Age, Lake Placid, and Poltergeist. At 6, we've got Mad Max, Jason Bourne, Lethal Weapon, and Rocky. At 11, we have Friday the 13th, Karate Kid, Godzilla, and Hannibal Lecter. At 3, we have the X-Men, Planet of the Apes, Star Trek, and Jurassic Park. 14, we got Jackass, Nightmare on Elm Street, Underworld, and Evil Dead. The 7 seeds are Insidious, Die Hard, The Twilight Saga, and Halloween. At the 10 seeds, we have The Mummy, Texas Chainsaw, the DC Universe, and Saw. Our 2 seeds are Mission Impossible, Transformers, James Bond, and Pirates of the Caribbean. And at 15, we have the Spy Kids, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, The Exorcist, and RoboCop. Now, if you want to follow along on the bracket, feel free to go to our Podbean website. It's under the links on the left-hand side. Under the YouTube link, you can find the bracket. You can see the seeds in each bracket, and we'll update you. Every episode that we do this, we'll put up a new bracket so you can keep following along where we end up. And yeah, when we get to the championship, we can compare all of our brackets and see how everybody feels. So let's get right into the first matchup here and start our round of 64 in the tournament with Star Wars versus Dirty Harry.
Yeah, I was going to say right before we get going, thanks for pointing out that we have the bracket actually posted somewhere, because I'm sure for our listeners who don't have the bracket up, that probably seemed like kind of an earful. But like I said, it's 64 movie franchises, and we've ranked them like we would a college basketball March Madness bracket. So I would highly recommend pulling up the bracket and following along. It just makes it a lot easier. But we'll go through right now, and we'll be able to spend a little bit more time on each matchup, and you can kind of think about the franchises that we're talking about and which ones you would think would win and which ones are your favorites and so on and so forth. So I know that was kind of an earful there, but try and pull up the movie franchise bracket on our website and follow along.
And feel free to fill one out, and you can always comment it back onto the Podbean page. We've got a YouTube channel at just browsing. Feel free to leave a comment on the video. You can send us your bracket at justsombrowsing@gmail.com. We want to see what you guys feel too, and what you guys think about this, and see your opinions on it as well. So feel free to fill out a bracket and follow along with us. And yeah, let's see who either has good taste in movies or, whose opinion we won't listen to anymore.
It's funny, when we first created this bracket a couple years ago, I had our selections saved because we were just doing it in regular old Microsoft Excel where it's not, you can't track the changes and all that kind of stuff. And I had my selections and Taya's selections, and I don't know if I want to say hers here on the podcast. Maybe we'll let her come on and defend her choices, but I think she's actually going to want a redo. I told her the two franchises that she had in the championship round the other day, and she's like, yeah, I might have to redo that. So like,
I'm gonna guess one's Underworld, or no, Resident Evil.
no, it was actually the Mummy franchise.
Oh, great movies. We'll get into them in round one.
They are good movies, but it's just funny. I never in a million years would I have them in the championship. So I think it's going to be very interesting to see if we get more and more people to fill these out. Who has certain franchises in the Final Four and in the championship, because it's just really interesting to see people's varying tastes in movies. Because I think,
and we get it's all your opinion. We're
Right.
not going to judge. Well, we might judge you, but it's going to be a friendly judge of, we're not going to believe your movie taste.
yeah, we might talk a little shit, but it'll be okay. Everyone's entitled to their opinion.
Yeah.
So do you want to start in the East?
Let's start
Okay.
in the East with the number 1 seed Star Wars versus number 16 Dirty Harry.
So I guess I'll go first. This is a no-brainer to me, Star Wars. And for a couple of reasons. A, I don't have really any affinity towards the Dirty Harry movies. I think the most I've ever seen of them is bits and pieces on TV on AMC channel.
Yeah.
AMC really likes playing a bunch of old Clint Eastwood movies. But I get that it's a,
It's more of an older generation.
yeah, and that's one of the characters he's really known for portraying as well. And it's this big franchise and kind of the badass. It's almost like a badass modern gunslinger type movie where it's like a Western gunslinger, but it's not really a Western. It's not set in Western times. But to me, this is a no-brainer. Star Wars. I just think for the cultural impact, for everything that I've said before. I mean, I was raised on these movies. Just the groundbreaking nature of especially the first trilogy,
Right.
and then just how immensely popular this franchise has ended up becoming. And I mean, you can really even break it down to not only the box office gross and the amount of movies they've made and the amount of Oscars that the whole franchise has earned as a whole, but just, I mean, how many times have you just been in regular conversation and people have been, Luke, I am your father, or like,
I mean, there's classic one-liners.
yeah, and like just other movies like Toy Story. I think it was Toy Story 2 did a riff on that where it was what's the guy's name? It ended up being Buzz Lightyear's dad. They made some joke about it when they were on that elevator shaft.
Oh,
and
I can't remember.
Turns out he's like the evil toy,
Yeah.
and like turns out he's Buzz Lightyear's dad, and like they do the whole thing where he's like, Buzz, I am your father, and Buzz is like, no. So it's like a whole riff, it's like permeated into other movies throughout history. Just how groundbreaking that series is. To me, this is a no-brainer. It's Star Wars.
I mean, I have to agree. I'm not going to add too much to that because, it's all opinionated, but I mean, Star Wars is it's just Star Wars. I mean, I don't need to add anything else. Like, let's move on to our next one because it's that easy.
Hang on, before we just ramble for a second, because I'm looking up what that bad guy's name was.
Okay, so while he looks up the bad guy's name, so we did forget Toy Story. There are going to be a couple franchises we forgot. You can comment on everything and let us know ones we forgot, so that maybe we can do an update to this or throw them into a consolation NIT tournament bracket and have them go against the winner or whatever. But coming into our next round 1 matchup is two franchises that one I've never seen because I don't like scary movies, and one that's really fun that we kind of talked about a character last week. So Zach seems to have found the name, so we're going to listen in real quick.
Yeah, sorry for that quick little sidebar because it was really bothering me. Emperor Zurg.
Zurg.
That's his name from Toy Story 2. So for any of you out there who have seen the Toy Story movies, Toy Story 2 is pretty great. I actually just went and recently watched all of those again, but I remembered that particular scene towards the end of Toy Story 2 where spoiler alert, you find out that Emperor Zurg is Buzz Lightyear's father, so it's a whole Star Wars reference. Anyway, I digress.
Anyways, back to our matchup number 2. We have the number 8 seed Scream versus the number 9 seed The Hunger Games. So this one for me was pretty easy, and I'll put this out here now. I hate scary movies. I do not like them. I've never liked them, nor will I ever like them. You can call me a baby, call me whatever you want to. I hate scary movies. So The Hunger Games easily won this one for me. And I like The Hunger Games too. Those are good movies. They're interesting on a storyline because it's kind of a futuristic sense of what could end up happening, if shit went downhill quickly. And I just really liked them. So I gave the nod to The Hunger Games.
I'm going to agree with you on this one. I think The Hunger Games gets the nod. Quick couple of thoughts. The Scream movies, I don't think I've ever actually watched one of them. Same thing with Dirty Harry. I've seen bits and pieces of the movies on TV. I think the Scary Movie franchise, the spoof franchise, ruined the Scream franchise for me because now I actually cannot tell if the Scream movies are supposed to be scary or funny. They literally ruined them for me. I see Scream on TV and I'm like, I don't know if I'm supposed to be scared right now or if this is supposed to be funny. It literally does not scare me.
And you see
at
the
all.
masks everywhere. And
yeah,
I mean, it's one of the most, or maybe not anymore, but when we were growing up, it was one of the most used Halloween costumes ever.
Absolutely. Yeah,
just
that
a black
weird
gown with the Scream mask.
That weird little Scream curved
Yep.
mask, the white mask. It almost looks like kind of some sort of weird ghost emoji or something. Who's like, oh, I don't know how to describe it,
weird.
but yeah. So the Scream franchise, I just don't really. It's not scary to me.
No.
The Scary Movie franchise totally ruined it for me, and I just can't watch it. I can't go back and unsee the scary movies making fun of Scream. So now Scream is totally ruined for me. So Scream is definitely not my selection here. I will say for the Hunger Games, I would have given the Hunger Games a nod on this matchup over a lot of other franchises. It doesn't have to be Scream. I think the Hunger Games is a really good franchise. I think it's one of the best examples of the young adult dystopian series that came from books. There's countless series out there of the young adult sort of dystopian future, chosen one sort of story idea. And I think Hunger Games is one of the very best examples of that. I really like those movies. I think the second one is my favorite, Catching Fire. I really, really, really enjoyed that one. The last one fell a little bit flat to me, and I'm not really stoked on the whole let's split the last movie into two movies kind of thing that's become a recent trend. And that's something that has happened with multiple franchises on this bracket, but Hunger Games is one of them. So I'm not entirely convinced that's the way to go most times. I think a lot of it's just a cash grab for the studio.
Right.
But yeah, Hunger Games to me gets the nod on this one. I don't think it's really that hard.
No, it was a pretty easy one. Just like this next matchup was pretty easy for me as well. Is the Paranormal Activity versus National Lampoon. Now, I actually have seen all the Paranormal Activities.
Oh,
surprisingly or
you've
not.
You've seen some scary movies.
Someone in my life at some point had made me watch the Paranormal Activity movies with them. So, I have seen all of them. Now, one of the movies ruined, I think it was the third one when they go to the wife's house or whatever with the daughters.
Yeah.
And they open the door and there's all of the brides or whatever.
I'm glad you said that because that's the one thing I remember from that whole
That
franchise.
movie ruined me.
Terrible.
I'm like I said, call me a baby, call me whatever you want. I'll sleep with the lights on if I have to. But that part of the movie, I was in the movie theater for that one and it freaked me out. So speaking of Paranormal Activity real quick, the first time I watched it was in high school. I was at this person's house with her parents on the couch watching it with us. And I was like, I can't seem too big of a bitch. I got to man up, get some cojones on me. And I literally stared at the camcorder stuff running in the bottom of the screen the whole movie. So I just watched the minutes tick by on the date.
And you didn't watch what was going on?
Didn't watch. Everyone in the room jumped but me. And I had no idea why they jumped because I was just watching the ticks go by in the bottom of the corner. And I was like, that's how I got through it. And then they started to progress into not using a home camera anymore. And I'm like, I don't have anything to watch anymore.
That's kind of a low-key genius move if you're looking to seem like a,
big macho man.
Big macho, stone cold, I don't get scared guy. Just this joke's on you guys. I wasn't actually watching anything that happened on the screen. I was just watching the video camera.
Right, but can you take me home because I'm terrified. So with that being said, I went with National Lampoon.
Oh, okay.
I went with an upset. I took the 12 seed right there, and I went with the upset.
So I think this is going to be the first matchup where we diverge in our selections. I'm going to go with Paranormal Activity here. I'm not altogether that high on the Paranormal Activity movies, but I have a stronger affiliation to them than the National Lampoon movies. I think I've seen out of the National Lampoon franchises basically the vacation ones.
I mean, those are all you
With
got to
Chevy
see.
Chase.
Those literally
Yeah.
make that.
Yeah, and they're funny, but they're also kind of dumb, and I don't know.
It's a dumb funny.
Yeah, there's a lot of those that, and Will Ferrell has kind of capitalized on that market in the last couple of decades of like the dumb sort of slapstick comedy. And sometimes it hits, sometimes it doesn't, and for whatever reason, these movies just don't hit for me. I'm going to go with Paranormal Activity. I think the first three, I think those are the only ones that I've actually seen. I think they may have made like 5 or 6 at this point. I don't know how many.
I think after 3, they switched families. So I think it became about a new family.
I think you're right. So Paranormal Activity is my selection here. I think the first 3 are actually pretty strong, and they're also the first 3, if I remember correctly, the story is all connected and it's told like out of order. So I think in chronological order, they don't happen the way the movies were released. I think like the first ones happened last or something.
Right.
I'm not,
I think 3 with the grandma happened first, then 2, and then 1. And we got 1, which I think was one of the little girls in the later episodes that the demon had like, moving on.
So real quick sidebar on that too. Quick note about the Paranormal Activity universe. If you're in that universe, not great to be a dude.
No.
Not what you want.
Not at
that's
all.
The one thing I gathered from that franchise is you do not want to be a guy.
Right, and we're both dudes, so why would you choose that?
I don't know why that is in that movie, but the demons just are not fans of the dudes in the family and in the whole hierarchy. I don't really know why. I don't know enough about the storyline really at this point.
Just say they're just like, fuck them. We don't like the dudes.
That's my one takeaway is, not what you want to be a dude.
My one takeaway, it's a scary movie, so I don't like it. So now we can move on to 4 versus 13. So we got, at the 4 seed, we got Alien versus Final Destination. This one for me was pretty easy. And I feel like we've got the same one on this one. Of course, we both went Final Destination, right?
Incorrect.
Oh, okay, yeah, you're right. I went Alien as well. I thought, even the new ones, I mean, they're just so good. Like even if you remake the movie, the same story but modern, it was just good. And the old ones were groundbreaking too.
Yeah,
they're phenomenal movies. So I had to go with Alien.
I agree. Alien on this one. Just a couple thoughts. Final Destination really fucked me up when I was a young kid seeing those movies. I, to this day, will not drive behind a semi with big chunks of lumber
like pipes or stuff,
or pipes or anything like that because of that scene in the original where they all like snap and roll off on the highway and then it goes through the windshield and kills that dude. That movie, the first one in particular, I was probably too young to see it when I saw it, and I think my neighbor who was in high school, I was over there hanging out at his house. He was like, "You want to watch Final Destination?" Of course, I sat down and watched it, and it fucked me up. It was a mistake. So I will forever be like kind of terrified of those movies.
Some of the way like people die in that, I'm like, sure that could happen in real life, but
they definitely take.
I'm gonna win Powerball 10 times by the time that happens to anyone.
Yeah.
So.
And also, stop making them, Like, why do we have that many Final Destination movies?
The next thing is going to be, like, some dude goes to smack, like, a wasp, and he accidentally hits, like, a lampshade that's in his house, and the lampshade flips over him, and he suffocates to death, and everyone's going to be like, oh, my God.
Yeah, there's a lot of, I don't know. Those movies bother me.
No,
Alien,
I agree.
I'm a big fan of the Alien franchise. I actually own the very original one. For the longest time, I had seen all of the sequels, but not the original, and what's interesting is the original is kind of a straight-up horror movie, whereas the sequel, like especially the direct sequel, Aliens, which was another James Cameron movie, is more of an action movie, an action sci-fi, whereas the first one, the Ridley Scott movie, is a horror. And I really like the first two, especially. The sequels with Sigourney Weaver start to get a little weird after a while. They made several of them. But then the new ones, Prometheus and then Alien Covenant, they look a lot cooler just because they're more recent. The visual effects are pretty stunning. The storytelling is a little suspect. I think a lot of people's problems with Prometheus and Alien Covenant is just storytelling choices, but I think visually those movies are just really fun to watch.
Yeah, I agree.
And also, I'm a really big fan of anytime there's a artificially intelligent robot who looks like a human. That stuff's really cool to me. And Michael Fassbender plays
it great.
the robot, and especially playing dual robots in Alien Covenant
is great.
is just dope. I'm in.
Yep.
So I'm a big fan of artificial intelligence stuff, aliens, and also actors playing two roles, which that latest movie has all of those things. So you can sign me right the fuck up for that one. So anyway, Alien is definitely my selection there.
All right. So we agreed on 3 of 4 so far, 75%, not bad. I think we're gonna agree on this one too. For our 6 seed, we have Mad Max versus the 11 seed, Friday the 13th. I went with Mad Max. Again, Friday the 13th, scary movie. Don't care to watch them. Then again, it has a tough draw against Mad Max. Mad Max is a great franchise that, in my opinion, is going to beat them out in 95% of people's brackets anyways. And there's no room to argue for me because, it's just such a good movie.
Yeah, and my selection on this one is also Mad Max. Friday the 13th, I think, gets a lot of shit, especially from us, because Chris is always talking about, he's such a huge horror fan and he loves the Friday the 13th movies, but we've always just shit all over him for watching that. I don't know which one we just call it Space Jason. I don't know what it's actually called, but they literally, so I was talking about this the other day with these movie franchises. It gets to a point where if you just keep making them and keep making them and keep making them, the writers at some point have no choice but to go to space.
Yeah.
For all of these franchises, at a certain point, they're just like, okay, now it's going to be Freddy, but he's in space. And they're all like, yeah, that's great. Let's do that. Let's bang out a whole script about him being in space. It's like, guys, do you think maybe we could just stop making these movies? I think the creative well has run dry.
I mean, soon we're going to have Shrek in space, too. And Pirates of the Caribbean in space.
Yeah, I mean, it just, at a certain point, it just becomes comical. So the Friday the 13th movie, they just get a lot of shit, I think, because of that. And we literally just covered Mad Max, according to Metacritic, is the highest rated franchise on this entire list for average rating across their movies. Now, granted, there's only 4 Mad Maxes versus
but they're coming out with a new
million Friday the 13th movies. Yeah, the plans are to make another one. But I think literally, if you just took Mad Max Fury Road, one movie, and put it against all of the Friday the 13th, it's
100%.
Better.
Yep.
I mean, Mad Max Fury Road is a masterpiece, and Friday the 13th is kind of hot garbage in some of them. So,
easy
no
choices.
offense to anyone out there who is a big horror fan like our buddy Chris, who loves Friday the 13th. But
big offense to you, Chris. Fuck Space Jason. Love you, Chris. All right, so that was a pretty easy one again. So now we got our 3 seed, which is X-Men versus 14, which is Jackass. Now, at first, I had to take my time on this one because in high school I was a huge Jackass fan. Just the stupid shit they do was just so entertaining. Watching Steve-O put a shark hook through his cheek and go swim with sharks as human. I mean, I never wanted to do anything, which I'm glad they did because it was just so dumb that it made it so funny. But for me, X-Men is just like, in a true cinematic, franchise, Jackass is just real life idiots.
yeah,
Whereas X-Men is like, all right, it can be your escape from reality and be like, this would be a dope universe to be a part of. Now I started to think too, though, isn't X-Men a Marvel?
So no, they're 2 separate franchises.
Okay.
So the Marvel Cinematic Universe is its own thing.
But X-Men's part of Marvel.
Yeah, X-Men is they're Marvel
Right.
characters from the Marvel comics, but they're not part of the Marvel Cinematic Universe. So they're their own thing.
Right.
But yeah, I think Jackass,
Can we throw Deadpool in with the X-Men because he makes appearances with X-Men?
I think he's definitely considered part of the X-Men.
All right, well then X-Men 100% because
Yeah.
Deadpool is fucking phenomenal.
I think this one's pretty easy for me as well. It's X-Men. The original trilogy is so good. The prequel movies I thought have been really cool, especially Days of Future Past when they merged the old cast with the new cast, playing the younger versions of those characters. And then also, let's not forget Logan is a part of the X-Men franchise, and Logan is, I think, between that and The Dark Knight, the best superhero movie ever made. So I think this is a pretty easy one.
Yeah.
X-Men franchise wins this one in a landslide. I think Jackass, my only thoughts on Jackass are, I think anytime when we were in high school and we told our parents we were going to the movies and they asked what we were going to see and we said Jackass, it was just a collective eye roll of like, oh my God. Because I can specifically remember, especially, do you remember the 3D one?
With like the poo catapult, and
I think that
when he
little catapult.
shits and it's a volcano, and
Yes.
they start the scene
Yes.
off with a bunch of dildos flying at you.
That's exactly what I was. My
Yes.
only memory of Jackass 3D is starting off. There's just this explosion happening, and there's stuff flying towards your face, and of course it's in 3D, and you're like, "What is that?" And you look closer, and it's just dildos flying through the air, and it was just like a basket of dildos or something that
just
they
blew up.
exploded. So, I mean, that's really all you need to say about the Jackass franchise. I don't really think it has much of a leg to stand on, but you know, they serve their purpose. It's good laughter.
They made us laugh, and you know we're here doing this today, so we clearly didn't go down a path of stupid shit. But yeah,
And it made those guys incredibly wealthy and famous, so
Yeah.
good for them.
yeah, and they risked their bodies, not mine. So
So this next one, we have a 7 versus 10 matchup. 7, we had Insidious, and 10, we had the Mummy franchise. What are your thoughts on that one?
So again, I hate scary movies, and I got a story about Insidious, which is even more terrifying. So here I am as a sophomore in college. There's 5 of us living together in a 4-bedroom dorm on campus, and we had to be back early for track. So it's me and one of my other roommates and our 2 girlfriends at the time. They were all like, let's watch a scary movie. And I'm like, how about we watch like a comedy? You know, let's make it a rom-com. I don't care. Make it
Of course,
chick
Matt's
flick.
coming in there with a please don't let me watch a
So they go get,
Scary
I think it was Insidious Chapter 2.
great movie.
And I had just changed out one of our shower curtains. And I had put it down at the end of a hallway. You know, I wanted it to dry out before I threw it away. So, you know, just to save other people from moldy bullshit.
Yeah.
Well, we watch it, and in Insidious Chapter 2, I think it's Insidious Chapter 2, there is this is like the Demon Bride.
Yeah.
So everybody's gone. I'm by myself at like 3 a.m. and I wake up and I have to pee. I open my bedroom door and I have to turn left, and I look down the hallway where I fucking hung up this shower curtain, and it looked, you know, I'm like asleep still, and it looked exactly like this like zombie bride
Thing from Insidious 2.
yeah. I immediately went back into my room, closed my door and locked it, and peed out of a first-story window. I was petrified, and I am a sophomore in college.
You went to some great lengths to
And
avoid the bathroom.
I was terrified. I woke up the next day, and that thing was gone. I was just like, we're done. It's out. So I went with The Mummy.
Okay.
And I love The Mummy. I could watch, you know, The Mummy and The Mummy Returns 1,000 times. It's just great to me.
This is a tough one.
Like Dragon Emperor, I'm kind of like, eh.
Yeah,
Let's
I think
skip that
everyone would just like to pretend that one didn't happen.
Yeah.
This is a tough one for. So you're going The Mummy.
I'm going The Mummy.
This is a tough one for me because I think both franchises have 2 really strong entries. And I only say that because I have seen all of the Mummies and I have not seen all of the Insidious movies. I've seen the first 2, and I think they've made 4, if not 5 at this point.
I think so.
The first 2 are 2 of my favorite scary movies of all time. I'm not a huge horror movie fan, but the first 2 Insidious movies, normally what I try and do is I'm very selective about which horror movies I'll watch, and I try and pick the ones that I think are not only going to be a good scary movie, but a good movie.
Right.
And those first 2 have a really good storyline, a really clever way that they're both tied together, especially once you see the second one. And they're also terrifying.
They're very terrifying.
Yeah. So, but also when I consider The Mummy, the first 2 Mummies, The Mummy and The Mummy Returns, are great movies. Just
Great.
amazing popcorn blockbuster summer like action adventure movies. That
I'll put this out there. At Universal, they have a Mummy ride. They don't have an Insidious ride because
There you
no
go.
one
That's
wants
a-
to go on an
that's-
Insidious ride.
That's
where
a
they're-
good point.
They're like, hey, you're going on a demon adventure. It's like, nah.
I'd rather stick with The Mummy.
I'm gonna go to the
'Cause
Simpsons. At this
There's
point.
also something about The Mummy that's scary, but also just cheesy enough where it's almost fun. Like those movies are
Right.
fun, but they're kind of
It's
scary.
like, what
you
if
know?
this is true?
It's an action adventure that gets a little dark sometimes, and I think it's also a really cool glimpse into the past when Brendan
Fraser.
Fraser.
Yeah.
Brendan Fraser. I almost said Gleason. That's a different guy. when Brendan Fraser was a bona fide movie
He
star.
was like the top
Yeah.
of Hollywood.
And
He
I
was
kind of
the
miss
guy.
those days. He's an awesome dude.
Yeah.
And-
I mean, I love those movies.
But I think I think this one's tough for me because then was it Tomb of the Dragon Emperor? I think everyone just wants to
got
pretend
cheesy.
that one didn't happen. It's not very good. And the new one with Tom Cruise, I actually just watched on TV the other day. It was on, and I watched most of it on TV, and it's okay, but I was really expecting a lot more from it, and I think the studio who built the movie basically was expecting a lot more from it too, because they were trying to kick off this whole, ever since the MCU has become so popular,
right.
the big thing is let's start our own shared movie universe. They were trying to start their own like dark monster universe or whatever they were going to call it, where it was going to be like the Invisible Man and Dracula and the Mummy and Werewolf and all this kind of shit. And the Mummy was supposed to be the first movie that kicked off that franchise, and it bombed so hard
It
that
did.
they've abandoned plans for that. So I think that's a really big black eye on that particular franchise for the sake of this argument. I really think when it comes down to it, I'm gonna go Insidious on this one. I'm gonna disagree
Yeah,
with
you
you on this one
would.
and go Insidious. Taya's gonna be mad at me too. She likes the Mummy.
Good. Maybe you sleep on the couch. Well, and that brings us to our last matchup in the East bracket for the round of 64. We have our number 2 Mission Impossible versus 15 Spy Kids.
It's kind of an interesting one.
I feel like it's very interesting, and I think it goes back to, this was another one of those hard ones for me, because I love Spy Kids. Those movies when we were growing up were like,
They're
I was
dope.
like, this is the shit I want to do. Like, mom and dad, sign me up. Like,
Yeah.
where do I go? But I realized like it's all fake, and then I felt like an ass. But they were great movies. I'll still watch them now. I'm pretty sure I watched one like a month or two ago. I watched whatever was on Netflix. I was like, I'm just gonna watch them all.
I would actually really like to rewatch these. I haven't seen these in a long time.
But with that being said, I did go with Mission Impossible. Just
The reason why I said this one was
It's good.
interesting is because one's kind of the kid version of the other one,
it's a good matchup.
It's almost like Spy Kids is the kid version of the IMF force that Ethan Hunt works for in Mission Impossible, where they got all these gadgets, they go on these adventures to save the world, all this kind of stuff. Spy Kids is really cool, and I think anyone who's probably our age or even who's a little kid nowadays who's being introduced to Spy Kids for the first time just falls in love with them. Those movies are
Yeah,
great
they're
to
great.
see as a kid. I'm going to go with Mission Impossible. I think Mission Impossible is one of my favorite franchises ever. I'm a sucker for super dope spy action thriller save the world movies.
Yeah.
And no one does it better than Mission Impossible, with maybe the exception of James Bond or something like that.
Yeah.
So
I
I think I'm going to go with Mission Impossible on this one. And plus, give me all of the Tom Cruise doing crazy fucking stunts. Like, sign me up for all of that.
And I
love
like
it.
that he does his own stunts too.
I love it.
All right, so that wraps up our East bracket. Now we're gonna move down to the West bracket. And
How are we doing on time, by the way?
We're
Is
doing
this running kind of long.
We're
or
at
no?
57 minutes already. So
Okay.
maybe we'll speed up this little portion of.
Or we could cover the West and cut it there, and then maybe cover the. Well, let's push.
We'll
Let's do
just
the round
push
of
through.
64.
You guys can listen. It's gonna be like a whole week, so you can listen through the whole thing in
Yeah,
chunks.
that's what the pause button's for.
Yeah. You can always come back to us, give us another view. It's okay. we're supportive of that. So moving on to the West. For our number 1 seeded game, verse 16, we got number 1 at Marvel. And number 16. Doesn't matter. We're not even going to say them. Because Marvel's moving on. All right, that was an easy one.
Just to give it its due credit, it was Medea. I don't know if there's a lot of people out there who are like big Medea fans, especially when it comes to a matchup like this. I'd really like to have a conversation with you if you pick Medea over
Never
Marvel.
seen
Me
Medea,
either.
So
Never had any interest, and not to say anything bad about it. I just have literally zero interest in seeing any of those movies.
Yep, so that was a quick one. And we flew through that easy. So now we got to number 8 verse 9 again. At 8 we have Jaws. At 9 we have Child's Play.
Okay, so can I jump in real quick?
You go for it.
Quick thought on this one. I bumped Jaws down. We had this one. So the first time we developed this bracket, we had different rankings for the different seeds. And we had Jaws ranked considerably higher than a
think like a
number
5th
8
seed, right?
Yeah. And I got to thinking about it when I was looking at it, and I started bumping Jaws down in favor of other franchises because let's be honest here. Jaws has one iconic, amazing movie followed by a bunch of forgettable sequels.
It's pretty much like, hey, there's a big shark in the ocean again.
Yeah.
Hey, there's another big shark that eats people in the ocean again.
Yeah. I mean, I have probably seen, I think, at least the immediate 2 sequels following the first Jaws. Don't remember anything that happens in them. I have no idea. They're just completely forgettable. They show them on AMC all the time, and during the summer they'll do a big Jaws marathon. The original Jaws is one of the best movies ever made. Like,
right.
For sure,
It makes you terrified to go in the
movie.
ocean.
Iconic. But I think as a franchise, it gets dragged down by the sequels, and I think there was no way we could have it where it was seated as high as it was because
Right.
of one good movie, you know? So that was my thoughts on that.
But with that being said, I did choose Jaws.
Me too.
Because Child's Play is just a doll that does the same shit.
Yeah,
And
I'm not
fuck dolls.
not a fan of Child's Play. I've never really seen many of them, and they always just kind of annoyed the shit out of me when I saw trailers or commercials for them. I was just like, fuck those movies. I don't want to see those.
Yeah.
And it's a doll with a knife. I don't see what's so scary. But, you know, maybe I'm closed-minded. Maybe I should go take a look at
I don't know,
Child's
dude.
Play.
I will say this. My grandma at her house had a doll in a closet. I can't remember what we called her. I'm sure if anyone in my family watches this,
Annabelle?
No, but I'm sure if anyone in my family watches this, you can leave a comment with the name that we called the doll. Most terrifying shit I've ever seen in my life. You just open the closet and there's a doll sitting there.
Dude, they're
nope.
so creepy. Especially those old porcelain dolls.
It's
To anyone
yeah.
who has those in their house, why?
Dolls are
Why are
just
you doing
creepy
that?
in general. Like, fuck dolls. I'm sorry.
Right.
You know,
And especially for any guests that stay in a house with a bunch of dolls like that, guess what? They're not a fan of
no
the dolls.
I'll go
Put
stay
them
in
away.
a hotel.
Put them away.
But that was easy. So now we'll move on to our 5 verse 12. And this one had me thinking, but not necessarily thinking. It was pretty easy. So we have at 5 we had Rambo, and at 12 we have American Pie. I went with Rambo. I love those movies. I'm a big war and action kind of guy, and Rambo's like that American hero that I love. With that being said, though, American Pie, I could watch all those movies over and over again because they're phenomenal movies. This is not a knock against American Pie at all. But when you match up with Rambo, Rambo's going to win.
It's definitely an unfavorable matchup for American Pie. That's, you know, in the college basketball March Madness brackets, you always look for the 12 versus 5 and look for that for being one of your upsets possibly for the tournament. Unfortunately, American Pie got a really tough matchup here. Rambo seems like the obvious choice to me. I like the American Pie movies. They were really influential for like those 90s comedies. They're pretty funny, and honestly, the sequels are not bad. Like,
No,
they made several sequels, and they never really got to where it was like, oh my god, this is so bad.
Right. I mean, I think they had a perfect storyline because they were in high school and then
Yeah.
they went to college. You know, they
Yeah.
played the sequels to where let's go high school, college,
They tailored it
adult
into
life, and then they're like,
exactly.
why don't we go back to high school?
It was like the reunion,
But it's the
or
reunion.
something.
Yeah. So they played everything so well.
They played it pretty well.
that-
Yeah. Nothing against American Pie. They
Just
ran
tough
into
draw.
a tough matchup there, and they're going to lose to Rambo.
Yep.
So
Easy.
next one, the Fast and Furious franchise is at number 4 versus Ice Age at number 13. So these in the March Madness brackets, these upsets happen from time to time. 13 over a 4, but I don't know. What are your thoughts on this? I could go
So-
on and on and on about how dumb the Fast and Furious movies have gotten, but they're really entertaining.
So I think in terms of a franchise, you can categorize both of these as those franchises that kind of drag on too long.
Yeah.
They went through their prime and then they're kind of like, we're out of ideas. We're just gonna have a bunch of muscle and car and random shit happen. Now the bad guys are good guys, and Ice Age is kind of one of those. I mean, Ice Age 1 was one of those movies. I was like, if they never make another Ice Age ever again,
It's one of the best
It's-
animated movies ever.
it's phenomenal.
It's so funny.
Fast and Furious, you know, I wasn't a big fan of Tokyo Drift. I know a lot of people love that movie.
Yeah.
I like, you know, the original Fast and Furious. Too Fast, Too Furious was, it was okay. Once you got kind of past 5, I mean, they were, to me, I still like the movies, but it's just kind of like, how much shit are these people gonna do through it, every country in the fucking world without getting in any sort of trouble? They're like, oh, you get in trouble, and then they help stop something. They're like, yeah, you're not in trouble anymore.
Oh,
It's
you're
like,
pardoned. Yeah, I don't know.
all right. So I did go with Fast and Furious. because I thought Ice Age kind of ran out. Like there was no need for sequels, in my opinion.
Yeah.
And Fast and Furious, they did leave like a storyline that they could build some sequels on. Ice Age just kind of forced it, I think.
Yeah, I think I'm going to have to go with Fast and Furious on this, even though I'm not really that big of a fan anymore. I think once they started making more after 7, it really annoyed the shit out of me. I thought that would have been a perfect place to stop. And I will stop myself from going on my Fast and Furious 7 rant because I think that movie is so utterly ridiculous. It's not even funny. But Ice Age had, like you said, the original, one of the funniest and best animated movies ever. It is hilarious. But all of the sequels are pretty... all of the sequels are pretty forgettable, I think. And I think Fast and Furious just has more memorable sequels. Like, I think Fast 5, when they first introduced The Rock's character, is my personal favorite. So that's pretty astounding for a franchise to have the 5th one be my 100%. Favorite one.
Oh,
so
they have like Ronda Rousey come in and make appearance too.
Yeah,
like,
I think I'm going to go with Fast and Furious, even though I think if it was matched up against a stronger franchise, I might have gone with the latter. But yeah, Fast and Furious wins that matchup, I think.
Yeah. So then moving on from our 4 to 13, we're down to our 6v11. So at 6 we have Jason Bourne, and 11 we have Karate Kid. Now, I thought about this one for maybe 20 seconds, and I was like, God, Karate Kid, I like, wax on, wax off, but I was like, they just Karate Kid 1, 2, 48, and then they come out with the one with Jackie Chan and Jaden Smith, and I'm just like,
yeah,
nah. Whereas Jason Bourne is one of those, it's a great story. There's nothing wrong with the Jason Bourne movies.
Yeah, I don't think we need to overthink this one. I think it's Jason Bourne. Karate Kid, the original is really good. Like I said, I don't think the sequels are all that memorable.
No,
I don't know. I just
don't
another
really money grab type thing.
Just another money grab. The Jason Bourne movies, however, are all of those very strong. Like the third one in the original 3 is actually very, very good. I don't think people were too stoked on the one they did with Jeremy Renner, who plays Hawkeye from Marvel. Remember they took that one? It was almost like a spin-off type thing. Mm-hmm. It's okay, but they're all very entertaining, and they're based on – there's a ton of books. So they had a lot of really strong source material.
Yeah, they had a lot to base the whole story off of.
Yeah, and I think each one, you can just take one book and make a whole movie out of it, and it's got a very coherent story and So I think – no need to overthink this one. I think it's Jason Bourne.
Easy. So Jason Bourne will go against the winner of this next matchup, which is number 3, Planet of the Apes, or 14, Nightmare on Elm Street. What are your thoughts on this one? I feel like it's a pretty easy one for me, but
yeah, my thoughts are Planet of the Apes in a landslide, and I haven't seen a ton of the older Planet of the Apes. I think I did see the Mark Wahlberg one that came out. I'm not even.
I think it's like 2001 or something like that.
Yeah, something like that. But just for the sake of the new trilogy, those are great. Those are great movies, and I think any of those, you just take those 3 versus the entire Nightmare on Elm Street franchise. Like, come on.
No, I have to agree. Planet of the Apes is one of those that, again, they build a story with Caesar.
Yeah.
And, they just build on it. And I think the way they build on it, it just makes it that much stronger of a franchise. And
and I think,
an easy choice.
Yeah.
And I don't think I've ever seen a Nightmare on Elm Street anyways.
I don't think I have either, actually, now that I think about it. But it's really cool. You look at that new Planet of the Apes trilogy. They get better as they move along, which is always a good sign for a trilogy or a series of movies. If they keep getting better, like that has to go over a franchise, which I haven't. I'm not a big Nightmare on Elm Street fan, clearly, because I haven't seen them, but I don't think anyone out there could really argue they got better as they went along.
I feel like
it's kind of like one of those Friday the 13th scenarios where it's like, okay, we're just continuing to make these movies because they just make money.
Continue to kill people.
Yeah. And he died, but we're bringing him back for number 6. Like, okay.
Oh, he was, he had his head severed off, but somehow it rolled back to him. And after his body had been cremated, and magically, poof, here he is killing people.
Do you remember when they did Freddy versus Jason?
Yeah.
I think actually I did see that one. Ironically, I haven't seen much of either of the franchises, but I did. I think when that was coming out, I was like, Freddy versus Jason. I'm like, this is so absurd. I have to watch it. And you know what? It did not disappoint.
You know,
it's
just
pretty absurd.
It's just two murderers that want to try and kill the other one so that they can go murder other people.
Yeah, it's ridiculous. Anyway, moving on. We have our 7 versus 10 matchup here in the West. And the number 7 is the Die Hard franchise. Number 10 is Texas Chainsaw. You want to take this one away?
Easy, Die Hard.
Yeah, I agree.
Easy.
Die Hard's just a really strong franchise. That first one is so good.
Well, and Texas Chainsaw, like, I get it was based on like a true story and shit, but come on, people. Like,
yeah, and I think every time they've remade Texas Chainsaw, it almost just seems like, you know, literally you take the name. I mean, it is a straight like just remake. I mean, we're seeing the same exact thing every time. Like, okay, we get it. These people show up to this super sus, you know, western town in Texas and end up, I don't know what the fucking plot is. They run out of gas and then they end up staying at some guy's house, the sheriff, and then there's some fucking psychotic
maybe next time they'll be in
wears
Oklahoma
a leather face or something. I'm just not that interested. I don't know.
No. I'm the same way. Maybe next time they'll be in Oklahoma or something. You can call it
Yeah.
Oklahoma Chainsaw Massacre or something like that.
Oh, the Oklahoma, Texas Chainsaw?
Yeah. Well, don't forget that part.
Okay.
So, yeah, that was easy. Die Hard, clearly. And then this one could be tough for a couple people. But we have number 2, Transformers, versus number 15, the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. Now, growing up, the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle movies, when we were kids, phenomenal. Graphics, you know, the whole movie part of it, if we go back and watch them now, we're going to be like, that was straight trash. How could we watch them? But when we were growing up, I loved those movies.
Yeah, the ones when we were younger were actually pretty awesome.
Now, going into the Transformers, though, the first 3 are just, like, you can't beat them. I mean, I literally just watched them probably 2 months ago, and you can't beat those movies. They're great. So much good action in them. And
that's another franchise that, just like Lord of the Rings, if it's on TV, I'm watching it.
Yep.
Really, any of those first 3. We were talking about a little bit before we started this podcast, but the new ones they've started to make with Mark Wahlberg, I haven't seen the very newest one, but I saw the one they made, like the very first one with him in it, which was like post Shia LaBeouf Transformers, and it's super weird. I don't know really where they're going with those, and
it's just a weird feeling.
I don't know how to describe it. They just got really strange. The storytelling's very bizarre, and there's a lot going on that doesn't make a lot of sense. But the first 3 are great.
And when we're in high school and Megan Fox comes out in the first one, we're all like, "Oh my god,
that definitely can't."
Megan Fox.
They're the most Michael Bay movies ever, where it's just like, hey, here's a bunch of robots shooting each other. There's explosions everywhere, a bunch of cool military jargon, and also here's a couple of really hot chicks just sprinkled in throughout the whole thing. So Transformers, I think, wins this one, pretty easily.
So that ends the left side of the bracket, the east-west side of the bracket. Now we're going to move over to the south and Midwest. You know, I don't think we had any disagreements on the
than a couple
the west side of the bracket, though.
Yeah, we
didn't have any upsets
universal.
either. We had 1 through 8 went through. So now on to the south, where
oh boy,
this could we could see some kinks here, but all right, well, technology at its finest. Let's just put it that way. So in round 1, we have our number 1 seed and the greatest movie franchise in the history of movies, Harry Potter.
All right, settle down, Matthew.
So since they're already moving on to the championship round, should we just skip down to the next one? Or?
Oh, you don't want to cover how I have the Amityville horror franchise beating Harry Potter?
And this is the end of Just Browsing as a complete podcast. So please tune into our individual podcasts.
Harry Potter, obviously. No offense to anyone out there who's big horror fans for Amityville, but I think it's pretty clear it's Harry Potter.
Yeah. If you like Amityville over Harry Potter, then...
I did recently watch... Well, not recently. I think it was last October. We always try and watch a bunch of horror movies in October. And I watched the Amityville remake with Ryan Reynolds. I almost said Gosling. I'm confusing all the actors with the same names for some reason. It's pretty good. Pretty scary. I don't know.
Yeah,
I've never really
not a
seen a
big
lot
fan,
of the
so-
earlier ones, but that's about all I can say about Amityville. I think Harry Potter wins in a landslide.
Easy. So, what are your opinions on our 8 versus 9? We got King Kong coming in at 8 and the Conjuring universe at 9.
I'm going to have to go with the Conjuring universe here. I think going back to my Insidious comments, the first 2 Conjuring movies are 2 of my absolute favorite horror movies ever made. They're insanely scary and they're really good. They got good storylines. I have not seen a lot of the spin-offs. The only spin-off I've seen is The Nun, and I thought was pretty damn scary. But I think it beats King Kong. I haven't seen... King Kong is another one like Godzilla. They've been making King Kong movies since forever.
Yeah.
It goes back decades. And I saw the Peter Jackson one, the one with Jack Black in it, where they go over to the island and
The longest movie ever.
Yeah, everything there is super big. It really fucked me up because there's a bunch of gigantic bugs, and
yeah.
I hate bugs. So I remember that one, and I remember the newest one that they just made a couple years ago with Samuel L. Jackson in it. And
Kong Skull Island.
yeah, they kind of roped in Vietnam War and all that kind of stuff into it. It's pretty cool, but I think Conjuring is my choice pretty easily here.
I mean, I just went with King Kong because fuck demons, you know,
Oh yeah, I should have known.
and fuck all the demon bullshit. I watched a little bit of The Conjuring, and then I just walked away, which was funny because I was watching it by myself on TV,
That's a psycho movie.
and then I walked away, and I'm like, wait, I could just change the channel. I'm not watching with someone like.
Yeah.
So
does
I
not,
changed
does not
it 'cause-
surprise me. If you don't like horror movies, those are really terrifying.
Yeah,
The
so-
first 2 are terrifying.
So no to Conjuring. I will watch
enough.
King Kong 100 times.
Fair enough. Okay, our number 5 versus 12 matchup, we have Shrek at number 5 and Resident Evil at number 12. Now, this one is actually worth a little consideration on my part. I'm a huge fan of the Shrek movies. Shrek 1, 2, and 3
love
are
Shrek.
all pretty great. I haven't seen anything past that. But the original Shrek, especially, I think is got to be considered with Ice Age and any of the best Pixar movies as some of the best animated movies ever created.
Oh,
the original
100%,
is so
100%.
funny. It's so good. But Resident Evil, they're really entertaining. I don't think any of the Resident Evil movies are going to be breaking any records for winning awards or critical praise. I don't think anyone's going to confuse those movies for that. But for the pure popcorn, summer blockbuster, let's just see, is it Mia Djokovic just run around and shoot zombies and do
Yeah.
cool badass shit? Those are really entertaining, and that's another series where Sci-Fi Channel shows them all the time. And if I'm eating dinner or doing something else and I want to just have something on in the background, Resident Evil makes for a great background watching movie. They're pretty entertaining. Although I think all things considered, I'm going to go with Shrek.
Yep, I got Shrek too.
Okay.
And I thought that was a pretty easy one.
Just wanted to give a special shout out to Resident Evil because I feel like it deserves a little bit of consideration. So our next matchup is the number 4 versus the number 13 seeds. And number 4 is Indiana Jones, and number 13 is Lake Placid. So right here you got Indiana Jones, which we covered earlier, has, I think, the 3rd most Oscar wins of any franchise on this entire bracket. So huge critical acclaim for the Indiana Jones movies. I definitely would say they're classics at this point, or maybe not classics, but really iconic. I mean, Harrison Ford, Indiana Jones is one of the 3 main characters that he is known for portraying. And those movies, along with Star Wars, literally raised me as a kid. I love the Indiana Jones movies. They're the right balance of great action adventure and funny, and there's some of them will get pretty scary and dark at moments. And then you have Lake Placid, which I don't think I've seen any of them other than the first one, maybe, and I see them from time to time on the Sci-Fi Channel, and they're definitely Sci-Fi Channel movies. I think everyone loves a good monster movie, but they're not really good monster movies.
They're just there.
But it's pretty fun to watch a giant crocodile eat people. I don't know. I mean, they have a certain appeal.
I mean,
I'm going Indiana Jones.
I'm Indiana Jones 100%. I think movies like Lake Placid make people scared to go in lakes, which is like, listen, the biggest thing in here might be like a 30-pound trout, which isn't really that big of a fish in all reality. But that movie made you think that in the mountains of Colorado, the fucking Loch Ness monster is going to come up and grab you. And like,
Is that really where it was set? Was it in Colorado?
No. Lake Placid's in New York.
Oh, okay.
But
That shows how much I know about.
I'm just saying, and I mean, I'm sure there might be a Lake Placid here, but it's probably some glacial lake up in the 14ers that.
I think we've spent enough breath on Lake Placid.
Indiana Jones, 100%.
Okay, the next one we got here is the number 6 versus 11 matchup. Number 6 is the Lethal Weapon series, and number 11 is Godzilla, which we already covered has 35 movies in that franchise going back to the 40s or something. Lethal Weapon, I think, has 4 or 5. They also made a TV show.
They made a TV just recently. Yeah. I went with Lethal Weapon.
I think I'm going to go with Lethal Weapon as well. I think the Godzilla movie they made with Matthew Broderick in the 2000s at some point, maybe early 2000s, where they're in New York and they end up blowing up the Staples Center and stuff. Or not the Staples Center.
The Madison Square Garden.
Madison Square Garden, sorry.
Completely end of the country.
Yeah, I just picked a well-known basketball stadium, and I was like, yeah, that one. That one's really awesome. I love that one. The new ones that they've made, I wanted to be a lot better than they were, and just for whatever reason, they didn't quite meet my expectations. That being said, the one that came out in 2014, I think, so the one prior to the one that they matched up, where he's fighting all the other monsters.
Right, where he's like working with...
Yeah, it's like just him and like the military, and then he has to fight off like, I don't even know what. That one's pretty cool. It's very visual. I would compare that to a movie like Prometheus, where like the storyline's not all that great, but it's very visually stunning to watch.
It's like a... So would you put in... I can't even think of the movie now. Came out when we were in middle school. It was filmed...
not Chronicle... Shit. I know what you're talking about. Cloverfield.
Would you make that a Godzilla movie?
No, it's its own thing.
Because I never saw like wasn't there a sequel or like a quote unquote sequel to it?
Yeah, we could go on a little sidebar on that, but I think they've made 3 of them now, but they're definitely separate from Godzilla.
Well, I've only saw the first one, and everyone's like, "Oh, it's just a Godzilla." Prequel. So
it's almost, Cloverfield 1 was almost like if they made a Godzilla movie from like a first-person point of view, if someone just walking around with a camera.
Let's just put it this way: never make a movie like that ever again, because I didn't know what I was watching. It was just like a shaking camera the whole time. I'm like
that whole like found footage style of shooting movies. It's been done well a couple of times, but that's not one of those examples.
No, not at all.
Back to the topic at hand with Lethal Weapon and Godzilla. I think I'm going to go Lethal Weapon on this. I have kind of conflated all of those movies in my head now and just combined them into one. But I remember them being really entertaining, really funny. It's like good buddy cop sort of action adventure type stuff. I think
big names.
Weapon, yeah. So I think that to me gets the nod. I know there's a lot of Godzilla heads out there who are like uber Godzilla fans who have studied the whole lore and mythology of Godzilla, and I think all of that's very interesting. I just think no one, especially nowadays, at least for me, and I'm a pretty big movie fan, I'm not going to bother going back and watching some Godzilla movie that came out in 1965.
I won't watch. I'll watch Lethal Weapon when it comes on, but if a Godzilla comes on, I'm like flipping through trying to find something more entertaining to me.
Yeah, so I think Lethal Weapon gets the nod there. All right, so the next one we have the number 3 versus the number 14. The number 3 seed here, I think, is a really strong franchise, Star Trek. And the number 14 seed is the Underworld series, which I think is very comparable to Resident Evil. And I gave some of my thoughts on that a second ago. But to me, I haven't seen a ton. Again, I'm more of a Star Wars person than I am Star Trek. I really like the new Star Trek movies they've made, the J.J. Abrams ones. But I don't know a lot. I was actually going through this exercise the other day, looking up the history of Star Trek and all of the shows and all of the old movies, and I have not seen enough to really speak intelligently on the entire Star Trek franchise, but I think for sure it's better than Underworld. I don't want to offend any Trekkies out there by saying it's not as good as Underworld.
I went with Underworld.
Did you really?
I think Underworld it's just an interesting universe in my opinion. I mean, there's just something about it, or not necessarily like it's a universe like it's its own, Marvel, but there's just something about it that it was captivating to watch, and I was like, I gotta watch all of these now.
Underworld's cool,
and
I really like Underworld.
Drew me in. Whereas Star Trek, I think I'm like you. I like Star Wars so much that Star Trek's kind of just I don't know. I think Star Trek was before Star Wars.
It was, yeah.
But Star
definitely
Wars
different.
just hits different. And,
Yeah, it's a
and it
different
makes Star
story.
Trek look, not as interesting to me. So I
Yeah.
definitely went with Underworld just because I like the Underworld movies because they captivated me. Star
That's
Trek
a-
didn't captivate me.
That's a big upset. I think that's our first upset.
14
That's a 14
versus
over
3.
3 Underworld beating Star Trek.
Well, that's my third upset that you didn't have. So
yeah, I
that's
do
my
not
Florida
agree on
Gulf
that one.
Coast.
I'm definitely going to go Star Trek on that, and literally just from the newest 3 that I've seen, those are very, very good, entertaining movies. Just really well done movies.
Well, I'm
And
not saying they're bad either. They never captivated
I get
me
what you mean,
into
yeah.
going into another one.
Yeah,
So
and don't get me wrong, I think Underworld and Resident Evil are both really cool franchises, and they're very entertaining. Like, don't get me wrong, I love all the vampire versus werewolf stuff,
Yeah.
especially the ones set way back in the day with like swords and shit. Those ones are
the
really
old
cool.
school.
The old school ones. They got a little weird when they got modern and they're in like the modern world and stuff. I don't
Right.
know how I feel about those, but Kate Beckinsale running around as like this super vampire, like slicing the heads off of werewolves. I mean, who doesn't like that? That's pretty badass.
it was
So okay, you
captivating.
got Underworld, I got Star Trek. So let's roll on to the next one, which is the 7-10 matchup, and number 7 seed is the Twilight Saga. Number 10 seed is the DC Universe Saga. This is like the battle of the maligned movie franchises.
yeah. So my thoughts on this were very close. This one was a close one in my opinion.
And before we go,
And-
have you seen all of Twilight and all of
I have
DC?
seen all of Twilight. I haven't seen all of the DC.
Okay.
But what I was thinking, and I took out the Batman trilogy out of the DC universe. for
Yeah,
this.
because those are definitely separate for this
Right.
discussion. Yeah.
So I'm looking at more of the modern, Aquaman, all of the newer
Batman
ones.
vs Superman, Man of Steel, yeah, Wonder
So-
Woman.
The Twilight Saga, I've seen them all. I think I've seen them multiple times. Great movies if you're watching them with a female counterpart. If you're watching them by
Very
yourself,
good point.
you got to go with DC. My only thing against DC was Batman vs Superman.
You didn't like it? Weren't a fan?
One of the dumbest movies I've ever spent time watching.
That's another one.
You have a super being against a trillionaire. A super being who can shoot lasers out of his eyes is literally the strongest thing in the galaxy that we know. Only has one thing that can kill him against a trillionaire.
just a dude with a
Just,
bunch of gadgets.
just a dude with a bunch of gadgets, and the dude with a bunch of gadgets almost wins. Like, fuck off, DC. You can't have a superhero versus super rich dude. He's not Iron Man.
I'm gonna go DC Universe on this one. I just don't think the Twilight movies are very good at all. I understand there was a massive appeal for them when they came out, and they're a very immensely popular book series and movie series, but they're just not for me. I don't think they're very good. The DC movies are not really good movies on average. I think Wonder Woman and Aquaman have got the most
Yeah,
critical praise.
and they weren't very
And
good.
even those, I think, don't even stack up with the worst Marvel movies.
No.
So that being said, I'm still going to go DC. Batman vs. Superman's another one. Just real quick thoughts on that. It's not a great movie, but I will watch the shit out of
So
that movie.
bad.
I will watch the shit out of that movie. It gets
I won't.
also very weird towards the end with the whole Doomsday thing.
Yeah.
And I think the biggest problem with DC movies is the storytelling, the script decisions on how they've chosen
They tried too hard.
They also rushed the shit out of it.
Yeah.
That's their biggest issue, is that they tried to make their Avengers level movie before they had even given every single Avengers level character their own movie.
Right.
It's like, what are you doing? Like, Marvel has you beaten by 10 years. They're way ahead of the game. Like, just accept
Take
the
your
fact
time.
that they've beaten you to the punch and take your time and make good movies.
Yeah.
Give us a Flash movie. Give us a Wonder Woman movie. Give us a Cyborg movie. And then give us Justice League.
Right.
Not go, oh, here in Batman versus Superman, we're going to first introduce you to the fact that this is a shared universe, and also introduce Wonder Woman. It's not even her own movie, but we're going to shoehorn her into this other movie. You know, and they just
Like boom, 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 and they're like, "How do you like it?" It's like it's too much.
That's their biggest mistake is rushing it. But all of that being said, I'm going DC Universe.
And I went with DC Universe too. That brings us to our final matchup in the South, which is our number 2 seed, which is James Bond versus the number 15 seed, which is The Exorcist. Easy one again, James Bond.
Yeah.
Fuck The Exorcist. I've watched exorcism videos on like YouTube and shit. Terrifying. Fucking terrifying. Worst idea I've ever had.
I think at this point, your thoughts on horror movies have been
out the
well
window.
documented.
If I say a horror movie, we're moving on. You already know my decision.
I'm not going to sit here and argue with you because I think James Bond absolutely in a landslide beats the Exorcist franchise. I think if you went out and asked a bunch of random people on the street if you said, hey, pop quiz, does The Exorcist have sequels? A lot of people wouldn't even know that there are sequels.
Right.
And the fact that there are enough sequels to be considered a franchise in this discussion means there's more than 3.
Yeah.
I've never even seen the original. I think the original is one of the best horror movies ever, supposedly. I've never seen it, but what the fuck? It's a franchise, really? We made more than 2 sequels to the original? Not even on the same level as James Bond. Not even close.
So with that being said, we wrap up our South bracket. Now we're going to move on to the Midwest bracket. And with our number 1 seed versus 16, we have number 1 with The Lord of the Rings / The Hobbit versus 16 Scary Movie. What are your thoughts on this one? Tough one, huh?
I don't think this one needs to be overthought at all either.
Okay.
I think it's Lord of the Rings, Hobbit.
Yeah.
The Scary Movie franchise is they definitely nailed the spoof movie thing. That whole trope
They were the
best.
spoof movie.
They defined that whole genre. And the first 3 are really hilarious to me, but not even close.
Yeah,
Lord of the Rings.
I agree. Easy one to move on to. So now we have our 8 versus 9, and at 8 we have Despicable Me, and 9 we have Transporter. Now, the inner child in me loves Despicable Me, so I went with Despicable Me because I could sit there and watch all of those movies, the Minions, the Despicable Me's, over and over and over and over and over again, and never get tired of it. They're just great movies.
Fair enough. I'm going to go Transporter. I did not even know until I was doing some research on this to just double check that all of the franchises we had included did in fact have more than 3 movies. I didn't know that Transporter had more than 3. I thought there was only 3 with Jason Statham in it. But there's actually a 4th one, which brings it into contention for being a franchise in this discussion. And I didn't even know it existed. There's one they remade with basically the bad guy from the original Deadpool. Do you know who I'm talking about? Like the British guy who does all the experiments on Deadpool and stuff. He plays basically Jason Statham's part. And I don't know if it's supposed to be some sort of a prequel or maybe it's just a total remake where they're just like erasing the story from the first 3 or something. It's so irrelevant. I didn't even know it existed until I looked it up. The first 3 are super dope, though. Especially the first Transporter, like that. Basically, him doing those movies. Well, pretty much any Jason Statham movie. I guess I won't go that far, but that's what led him into the Fast and Furious. Like he's basically playing the Transporter in the Fast and Furious movies now. You know what I mean?
I get it.
I'm going Transporter on this.
Yet we disagree again. I think it's only the 4th time though, so we're doing pretty good. This will be a pretty easy bracket for us. That brings us to 5 versus 12. We have Predator coming in at our 5th ranked in the Midwest bracket versus Jack Ryan at number 12. Oof. What are your thoughts on this?
Actually, a pretty tough matchup. I have seen bits and pieces of, I think, all of the Jack Ryan movies. The only one I know really well in my recent memory is the most recent one they made with Chris Pine from the Star Trek remakes. That one's pretty entertaining. I don't think it got really high praise in terms of the critics, but it's a cool spy movie. The Jack Ryan character is another sort of like Jason Bourne type character. We could have actually included him in our action movie character breakdown.
I think we did, didn't we?
No, I don't think we did include Jack Ryan. Missed opportunity. Maybe we'll have to rehash that.
That was so many days ago. I can't remember.
But that's a cool franchise. He's a really cool, badass, sort of Jason Bourne-esque character, but I love the Predator movies.
They're great.
I'm going Predator on this.
I went Predator as well. There's something about those movies that was just intriguing. And I didn't watch them, until more recently, but there's just something about them. I'm like,
they're just dope.
There's just something that catches you. And then they come out with movies that you can go hunt them, and I'm like, why would you hunt something that's literally hunting you?
Yeah.
And is a lot better of a killer than you.
Yeah, it's kind of a cool concept of not only a terrifying alien, but a terrifying alien that is literally designed to hunt things.
Yeah.
Like it is the ultimate predator. It has
predator.
Not only is it an alien with like super speed and super strength and like fangs and stuff, but it's got all these like really cool gadgets and
Right.
guns and fucking Wolverine knives and stuff.
It's the ultimate
It's crazy.
predator.
And the first movie with Arnold is, I think it's either that or the original Terminator is the first R-rated movie I ever saw. So it has
sets
a
the
really
bar.
special place in my heart. I'm definitely going Predator on this one. I'm just a huge fan of those movies. Plus, the Alien versus Predator movies.
Yeah, those are
when
great.
they cross those two franchises. Say what you want about them, but they're pretty entertaining. I'll watch those movies any day of the week. Yeah, I'm going Predator here.
Well, and speaking of Terminator,
Yeah.
that is in our next matchup with the number 4 seed going against the number 13 in Poltergeist. So again, a super hard decision for me, with Terminator quickly advancing to the round of 32.
100%. I'm going Terminator. I'm hopping on that bandwagon
And-
too, dude. Terminator. That's actually going to be a really tough matchup discussing Terminator versus Predator for me. Two Arnold Schwarzenegger-led franchises. I love the Terminator movies. I love them.
Dude, they're great. And the new ones they've come out with don't let you down either. They're phenomenal movies.
The only one I have not seen is the most recent one, and I heard it's not amazing, but it's also not bad. I think it's actually better than the last couple that came out before it. The first one is a great movie, and the second one is probably the greatest sequel ever made. If not the greatest, one of the greatest sequels ever made. Terminator 2 slaps.
They're just great. It was an easy choice. But with that
Okay.
being said, they got a tough bracket they still got to fight through.
Yeah, I think next time you guys tune in to Just Browsing, and we're covering the round of 32, Predator versus Terminator, I'm gonna have some serious thoughts about that.
Could get
matchup.
juicy.
Yeah.
But with that being said, we're going to move on to our number 6 seed Rocky versus number 11 Hannibal Lecter. Now, I love Rocky. I'm a big Stallone guy. Love all of his work.
Fuck yeah, dude.
Rocky's just that underdog. You know, he loses, comes back, and just gets knocked down. You know, he probably has CTE after the first movie.
Rocky for sure has CTE.
But he just
For
keeps
sure.
going forward. One of his best friends then dies, and he goes on a revenge mission. And the whole Rocky movies are just great. Now the newer ones, I've kind of been like, all right, dude, just retire already. Like, holy shit. But I went with Rocky. I do love the Hannibal Lecter movies. That's one of those movies that you can.
That's surprising to me
I
that you
can
like
watch.
those movies.
They're just interesting.
I guess they're not straight up horror. It's more of like a suspenseful.
it's more of like a
movie or
suspenseful. Like, let's
thriller.
go into the head of like
A cannibalistic serial
cannibalistic
killer. Yeah.
serial killer, and it's just one of those things. You're like, well, it's interesting to follow along.
Definitely. They're cool movies. I've seen Silence of the Lambs, and I think the direct sequel to it. I haven't seen anything beyond that, though. I don't know how many they made. They also made a TV show
Yeah.
about it, which I think is still going, too. So clearly, a lot of love out there for the Hannibal Lecter series. Excuse me. I'm going with Rocky, for sure.
I went with Rocky too,
And I also considered the newest Creed movies, which are spin-offs from the Rocky movies.
but
are
they have
both
Rocky in them.
really good
Yep.
movies. Really good.
I totally forgot to throw them in there, but I agree too. Those are phenomenal movies. I'm
me-
just hoping they stop those at the right time instead of carrying them on to Rocky 48 when he's in a wheelchair, in a retirement home fighting Drago again or some bullshit.
I would tune in for that. When considering how to rank this one, when you loop in the Creed movies, that put it up to a number 6 seed for me. The Creed
Yeah.
movies are strong. And I also think that's a genius way to keep this franchise going is it's not Rocky anymore.
No.
He's a coach. He's passing it on to Apollo's son. And, dude, they're dope. They're great movies.
They're great. There's nothing more to say. They're great. Rocky's going on. But now, he's got a tough matchup. He's got Jurassic Park or The Evil Dead. Again, this one is probably going to be a pretty easy one for the majority of people. Taking Jurassic Park.
Yeah.
Groundbreaking movies again at that time. You know, early 90s is when the first one came out.
93.
Phenomenal movie for
Dude,
93.
It holds up so well, that original one.
Even now you watch it and you're like, that could have been made yesterday.
Yeah.
Just great.
I think Jurassic Park for sure on this one. The Evil Dead remake they made, I think in 2013 or something, whenever that came out. Pretty fucking badass movie, actually. Pretty scary, pretty intense. But the first two, especially Jurassic Park movies, even the third one I like a lot, are just fantastic movies. I think that original movie is one of my favorite movies ever.
Yeah.
And obviously you got the Jurassic World movies now, which I don't think are as strong, but they're really entertaining. I mean, who doesn't? Dude, dinosaurs are fascinating.
Well, it's terrifying because we're unearthing more and more and people are experimenting more and more. And I'm like, we don't need Jurassic Park. Let 2020 end before you start any of this other shit.
Yeah, I saw this thing the other day on the internet. It was like I don't even know if this article was real, because some of these people will just put these articles in there for memes just for the sake of making a meme. But they were like something about some headline about scientists trying to experiment with dinosaur DNA they have found in fossils to bring dinosaurs back or something like that. And this guy commented and was just like, we literally have an entire franchise of movies explaining why this is a horrible idea.
Yeah. It's a terrible idea.
It never once worked in the entire Jurassic Park experiment. That never went well.
Or if you bring back dinosaurs, let's just bring back ones that can't go in water and can't fly. And then we'll put them on Jeffrey Epstein's island and we'll just call it a day.
Hey, there's an idea. Put him on Jeffrey Epstein's island. That'll become Isla Sorna or whatever was the island in Jurassic Park. Okay, down to our last couple, and this will end the round of 64. So we have our 7 versus 10 matchup. Number 7 seed, the Halloween franchise, and number 10, the Saw franchise. So a couple of horror movie franchises here. I don't know what you're gonna do because you hate horror movies.
So this one was purely based on experience. I went with Halloween. In high school, someone brought in like the Jigsaw doll.
Oh, from Saw. Okay.
And this thing was like not just like a little, cotton doll. This thing was like its eyes could move and shit.
Oh shit.
And I'm sitting there in class, and she put it down in class. And the fucking thing looked at me. I walked by it and I gave it a swift kick. And I mean, I yeeted that thing into the wall. And I had zero remorse as I just kept walking out of the class. As soon as that thing looked at me, I'm like, nah, I'm done. And yeeted against the wall. She got upset. I was in Miss Lindsley's class.
Okay.
And she loved me, so she just followed me in the hall and goes, why do you do that? I was like, it looked at me. And she goes, it is pretty scary. And then she went back into class. And
Okay, can I ask a question? Not who, but why were they bringing in a Jigsaw doll?
I have no idea.
During October? Was it during Halloween?
I have no idea.
What kind of a serial killer does that? That's
I don't know,
weird.
but it was terrifying. So I yeeted against the wall and walked down in the hallway.
I think you're totally justified for doing that.
And so I'm like, when I see Saw shit, I'm like, I'm done. Like, Jigsaw thing is terrifying.
I think on this one, I'm going Halloween, and only because the original is it's a classic horror movie. It's a really well-made movie. The storyline is pretty scary, and it's just a strong story. They have also made sequels, and you just beat this dead horse to oblivion. But the new remake they made, I thought was pretty cool. It's exactly what you're expecting from a Halloween movie, so don't go into the new one expecting literally anything different other than what the formula for a Halloween movie is. But the Saw franchise, the only reason to me Halloween beats Saw is another franchise that has kind of gotten ruined for me because of the scary movie spoof movies.
Yeah.
They just, that one that had like Shaq in it and like Dr. Phil.
Yeah.
I think if anyone has seen those scary movies, I now cannot take Saw seriously. Just like Scream. I just can't take it seriously because of Scary Movie.
I think Saw's got like, their plot line is interesting. They're like, you got to do all this puzzle bullshit to save your life, but you're going to have to kill everybody else to do it. It's interesting in the way that it's like, how would someone do that? Because you don't want to be selfish, yet you have to be selfish.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm sorry, but if we're in a room and shit's going down, like, you got to do this, which is going to end up killing your friend. I'm like, sorry, Zach. Yeet your head off with the saw blade or something. I'm sorry, but I'm trying to stay alive. I don't want you to do something bad to me.
Well, good for you, because you're then going to go on living with the guilt of murdering one of your best friends and a co-host of the first podcast you ever started. And
But-
you're also probably going to have, like, one less foot because you probably had to cut off your foot
Yeah,
because
probably.
the fucking key was buried in your calf or some dumb shit. I don't know.
Well, let's just hope I'm never in that situation.
Agreed.
Or if it
Please
is,
just kill me immediately.
if it is, I'm just going to hold my breath till I pass out,
There
and
you
then hopefully I trigger something that just ends
Yeah.
me when I'm passed out.
Yeah.
Terrifying, but hopefully I'm never in that situation.
So wait, did you go with Halloween?
I went with Halloween.
Okay, all right. I kind of forgot. We went on a weird tangent there. Okay, so Halloween, down to our last matchup here in the Midwest side of the bracket for the round of 64. Number 2 seed versus number 15 seed. Number 2 is Pirates of the Caribbean franchise, and the number 15 is the RoboCop. I'm going to go Pirates of the Caribbean on this one. I think this is a 2 versus 15. It's pretty obvious, which
Yep.
normally those matchups should be. Pirates of the Caribbean's got at least 3 super strong entries, probably 4. The newest one kind of went downhill. I'm not a big fan of, but the very first Pirates of the Caribbean, the Curse of the Black Pearl movie,
Phenomenal.
is great. And
Yeah.
I will never forget everyone going to see that. That came out when we were in high school, and just thinking, this movie is badass.
Yeah.
I was not expecting that movie to be that good.
No, and I expected them to be done at that one. I didn't really see the need for a sequel. But
They
you
did
know,
a pretty good job.
2 and
though.
3, those storylines are good.
Yeah.
And then, yeah, they kind of get a little iffy here and there, but they're still super entertaining. Even if the storyline is straight, like, dog shit. It is entertaining to just get in there and watch the movie.
This is one crazy thing that you can think about with the Pirates of the Caribbean franchise, and especially that just goes to show how good that first movie is. Johnny Depp got nominated for an Oscar for playing Captain Jack Sparrow for a movie that was based on a theme park ride. How
Yeah.
fucking crazy is that? That's a pretty random, like, you would not expect that movie to do well, especially
No.
to get nominated for any sort of actual awards. Great movie. And the first 3 are really entertaining, really good movies. I think that one, no need to overthink it.
No.
The RoboCop movies, I think I have seen the original, and I've seen the latest remake they made, which was, I think, just kind of like most Hollywood remakes, where it's a flashier remake with less substance than the original.
Right.
So I don't think there's much more you need to say about it.
No, I think it was a pretty easy choice to go with Pirates on this one, and I mean, I'm pretty sure they're gonna have to make another one since Johnny Depp lost $600 million or whatever in his divorce with his wife.
he's
So
probably gonna have to come back.
he's got to make like 8 more. So let's just get ready. Let's get ready for a whole
Yeah.
another, 20 years worth of Pirates.
All right, so that rounds out our round of 64. So I think we're gonna try and post. How are we gonna work this out?
So
with
what we
posting
might
the
end up
pod?
doing then is it looks like we're different on 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 different selections. So we'll link 2 new brackets. We'll link one for Zach's choices and one for mine onto the Podbean page, and you can click on them. You can see what Zach picked compared to what I picked. And then, in next week's episode, we'll go through the round of 32, and depending on how much time we have then, we can get into our Sweet 16. But yeah, look for the links. We'll link this stuff. We'll link it on the YouTube. We'll link it on our Podbean website. And yeah, join along. Send us some comments. Send us some feedback to the email at justsomebrowsing@gmail.com. And yeah, we'll see what you guys feel on this first round, and we'll get ready for the round of 32.
Yeah, I can't decide looking at it if these podcasts are going to get shorter or longer with less teams. I think maybe longer because it's going to be better franchises probably matched up
right.
with each
It'll
other.
become more of a debate if we have disagreements.
Yeah. So look forward to that.
So yeah, send us your input on this stuff. So if we have different opinions, we can fall back on someone else.
Yeah, we would definitely love for anyone just to even comment in some of the franchises, on our various channels, some of the franchises that they think would deserve to move forward. If you can't get on and fill out the bracket, but if you can submit those, we'd love to see those, because I am really curious to see what people's favorite franchises are, and I think we got a pretty comprehensive list of the biggest and best franchises.
Yeah.
here.
And I mean, if we forgot one, feel free to shout us out. We can explain why we didn't bring them in, or we can just feel like a bunch of dumbasses and be like, that could have easily been a top 4 seed.
I don't know about that. I think we, well, we'll see.
Well, I mean, like 1, 2, 3, 4.
We could have even had. We were talking about this before we recorded this episode. We could have had 4 more franchises and done some play-in games like they do.
Yeah.
Because college basketball now, it's technically like 68 teams, and they have those play-in
Right.
games and stuff. But I don't know if we wanted to really go that far.
That would have.
We could have scrounged.
That
up
would have
some
taken
more
our time.
franchises, but
Time pretty long. But
yeah. Which this is already. How long have we gone on this one?
we're almost to 2 hours.
There we go. There we go.
But you guys have made it this far, so feel free to leave a like, leave a comment, tell us, your thoughts and opinions on, Zach's choices and my choices, and we'll be sure to, shout you guys out in the next episode in the round of 32, and, we look forward to getting back into this thing and starting to actually debate about it instead of, nodding our head saying, yeah, we agree, let's move on. Let's
Yeah.
get ready to dig deep into the franchises and present our cases. So I look forward to it.
Yeah. Well, I think that's a wrap on episode 2, my friend.
Yeah.